The salty air carried a sense of nostalgia as Evelyn sat on the old porch swing, her fingers tracing the grooves carved into the armrest by her late husband decades ago. The sun hung low over the horizon, painting the sea in shades of gold and crimson. She had lived here for over 40 years through storms, love, laughter, and loss. The creak of the swing was a familiar lullaby that made her feel safe, even now, when age had turned her hair silver and her hands frail. Her son Daniel stood by the gate, phone in hand, his expression restless. He had been pacing since morning, taking calls, checking emails, barely glancing toward the waves his mother loved. Evelyn had watched him silently, her heart aching with a feeling she couldn't name. He was all she had left her only son, the boy who used to build sand castles on this very shore and run barefoot through the tide. But now he seemed like a stranger in a suit, trapped behind screens and deadlines. "Mom," he said abruptly, sliding his phone into his pocket, "we're going tomorrow." Evelyn blinked, confused. "Tomorrow? Where are we going?" Daniel exhaled sharply, avoiding her eyes. "I've sold the beach house." The words hit her like a cold wave. "You? What? I sold it." He repeated, his tone matter, of fact almost rehearsed. "You can't stay here alone anymore, Mom. The maintenance, the bills, the leaks. It's too much. You'll be better off in the city near me." Her lips trembled. "You sold your father's house without even asking me." He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. "It's just a house, Mom. Dad's gone, and you're not safe living here by yourself. I've already signed the papers. The new owners will move in next week." Evelyn stared at him, her heart thudding unevenly. "Just a house," she whispered. "This isn't just wood and walls, Daniel. This is where your father and I built our life, where you took your first steps." Daniel turned toward the sea, his jaw tight. "I know, but we have to be practical." She watched him, her son who had grown into a man she barely recognized, sharp, ambitious, always rushing. Somewhere between his career and his ambition, he had lost his softness. The boy who used to laugh under the moonlight had vanished into someone hardened by the city's rhythm. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. She wandered from room to room, touching the memories etched in every corner. The kitchen where she'd taught Daniel to bake cookies, the hallway where his childish drawings still clung to the wallpaper, the living room where her husband had played his old guitar until his last breath. The ocean roared outside, restless and unyielding, as if it too sensed her sorrow. She stepped out onto the porch, the cool sand brushing her feet. The stars glittered faintly above, and the tide whispered secrets to the shore. She felt it then, a strange calm. Maybe it was time. Maybe life was pulling her towards something she didn't yet understand. The next morning, Daniel loaded her suitcases into the car. He looked tired, maybe even guilty, though he tried to hide it behind forced smiles. Evelyn stood quietly, watching the house one last time. "Mom," he said softly, "please don't make this harder. It's for your own good." She turned to him, her eyes full of unspoken things. "Daniel, do you ever listen to the sea anymore?" He frowned. "What, the sea?" she repeated. "You used to sit by it for hours. You said it made you feel free. Do you still feel that way?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "I don't have time for that anymore." She nodded slowly, as if confirming something she already knew. "Then maybe," she said quietly, "it's not me who's leaving home. It's you who already did." He didn't answer. Instead, he opened the car door, motioning her to get in. Evelyn took one last look at the porch swing, the seashell wind chime her husband had hung, the cracked window that let the sunlight in every morning. She smiled faintly, a secret kind of smile. As they drove away, Daniel didn't notice the figure standing near the dunes, an elderly man in a wide, brimmed hat, watching the car disappear. His sharp blue eyes followed them until the dust settled. Then he turned toward the house, his weathered face breaking into a knowing grin. Inside the car, Evelyn gazed out at the receding waves, her expression unreadable. She rested her hand on her lap, fingers brushing against a small, folded letter she'd hidden there. She had written it weeks ago, just in case. Daniel didn't know about it, just like he didn't know about the old man by the shore, or the secret Evelyn had guarded since her husband's death. As the road curved inland and the sea faded from view, Evelyn closed her eyes. She wasn't leaving her home behind, not really, because what Daniel didn't know was that the beach house wasn't just hers, and it had never been his to sell in the first place. The city was loud, too loud for Evelyn's fragile heart. The constant hum of traffic replaced the soothing crash of waves she'd fallen asleep to for decades. Daniel had rented a comfortable apartment for her, complete with large windows and modern furniture, but it felt hollow. Every surface gleamed, every corner smelled of polish and sterility. There was no salt in the air, no wind carrying the songs of the sea. Daniel left early each morning, buried in work. He had promised to visit often, but as the days passed, his calls became shorter, his visits rarer. Evelyn didn't mind. She'd always been patient, and now patience had a new purpose. She knew something her son didn't, and she was waiting for the right moment to let him find out. One evening, a week after they'd left the beach house, Daniel came home looking uneasy. "Mom," he said carefully, loosening his tie, "there's been a problem." Evelyn looked up from her knitting, feigning mild curiosity. "Oh, what kind of problem?" He ran a hand through his hair. "The sale," the buyer's lawyer called. "They're saying the ownership documents aren't valid. Apparently, the title still lists Dad's business partner, some guy named Henry Dalton, as co-owner. But he's been dead for years, hasn't he?" Evelyn's eyes softened, though she kept her expression calm. "Henry Dalton," she murmured. "Yes, he passed away a long time ago, but before he did, he made sure his share of the house went somewhere special." Daniel frowned. "Somewhere special? What do you mean?" The lawyer said there's a clause in the title about a trust. Something about the property being non-transferable until both listed parties are deceased and all agreements fulfilled. It doesn't make sense. You're still alive, so technically, the sale is void. Evelyn set down her knitting and smiled faintly. "It makes perfect sense if you know the whole story." Daniel sat opposite her, frustration flickering in his eyes. "Mom, are you saying you knew about this? Why didn't you tell me before I sold it?" She folded her hands in her lap. "Because, my dear, you didn't ask. You made the decision yourself, and maybe it's time you learned why that house isn't meant to be sold." He exhaled, sinking into the chair. "All right, I'm listening." Evelyn's gaze drifted to the window, to the faraway sky, where she imagined the ocean breeze still touched her face. "When your father and Henry built that house, it wasn't just for us. It was meant to be a sanctuary for anyone who lost their way. During the war, Henry and your father helped fishermen rebuild their lives, smuggling food and medicine to families who had nothing. When the war ended, they decided to keep one place untouched by greed, one place that could always shelter someone in need." Daniel frowned. "And that's the beach house." "Yes," she said softly. "Henry had no family of his own, but he trusted us. Before he died, he added a clause to the deed. As long as one of us lived, the property could never be sold, only passed on to someone who would protect it." Daniel rubbed his temples. "That's impossible, legal nonsense." Evelyn's smile was calm, almost wistful. "You'd be surprised what the heart can write into law when it's pure enough. Henry's nephew, Thomas, lives near the coast now. He tends the place, looks after it. You saw him actually when we left." Daniel blinked. "That man on the dunes." Evelyn nodded. "Yes, he's been there all these years, keeping watch. I wrote him a letter before we left. He knows the truth. He'll make sure the house remains safe, as it always was." Daniel was silent, his mind racing. "So the sale is invalid. I could lose everything. The buyers could sue. Maybe," she said softly, "or maybe this is a chance for you to remember what really matters." He stood, pacing, guilt slowly surfacing beneath his anger. "I thought I was helping you. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I thought you'd be better off." Evelyn reached for his hand. "You've always wanted to protect me, Daniel. But sometimes protecting someone means letting them stay where they belong. That house wasn't a burden, it was home, and home isn't something you sell for convenience." He swallowed hard, emotion catching in his throat. "I've made such a mess," she smiled gently. "Mistakes are just lessons in disguise. Go back there, Daniel. See it for yourself. Feel what you've forgotten. Days later, Daniel drove back to the coast. As the familiar scent of salt water filled his lungs, a heaviness lifted from him. The beach house stood as it always had, proud and steady, facing the sea. The old man, Thomas, was sitting on the porch, the same knowing smile on his face. "You must be Evelyn's boy," Thomas said, rising to greet him. "She told me you'd come." Daniel nodded, his throat tight. "I didn't understand before." Thomas chuckled softly. Few do until the sea teaches them. He handed Daniel an envelope. "Your mother left this for you." Inside was a note written in Evelyn's delicate handwriting. "My dearest son, if you're reading this, then you've found your way back home. Don't grieve for what's lost. The house isn't gone, and neither am I. The sea keeps its promises, and so do I. This house will one day be yours again, not to sell, but to remember who you are. Love always, Mom." Daniel stood there for a long time, the letter trembling in his hands. The wind carried the sound of the waves deep, eternal, forgiving. For the first time in years, he felt small in the best way possible. When he turned back to the ocean, he could almost see her there sitting on the porch swing, smiling, the setting sun glowing behind her. And though she was miles away, or perhaps already gone, Daniel finally understood what his mother had known all along. Some homes aren't built of wood or stone. They're built of love, memory, and the promise that no matter how far you go, the sea will always lead you back.